aspect of marriage that I believe sometimes can cause problems in newlyweds' lives and married couples' lives. And this has got to do with how do we relate to our parents and how do we relate to our in-laws. Okay, a very important aspect, and so we're going to be talking about this and what does the Bible say about this. There are two very, very important relationships that God wants us to honor. And I want you to look at them very carefully, and we're going to beautifully explain it in a very sensitive way. And maybe it will help us, and maybe it'll help young people to prepare for marriage. Before we begin, there are two very sacred commands in the Bible. Okay, let's look at them. One of them is found in Genesis chapter 2, and this has got to do with leaving and cleaving. And the second has got to do with honoring your parents. So we're going to look and see how they both work together. The first one is found in Genesis 2. And if you wanted to give a title to the message, it would be called Building Healthy Relationships with Your Parents and In-Laws. Okay, interesting topic. Or even cutting psychological apron strings. There are certain things that have to be cut and certain things that have to be bound in a different biblical way. So we're going to talk about that. Genesis chapter 2. And let's look at one of the commandments the Lord gave Adam in verse 24. He said, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Okay, that's a very important commandment. I want you to think about that. Jesus spoke about the same thing. This command of leaving and cleaving, leaving your father and mother and cleaving, or being joined to your wife, is a very important sacred commandment given by God. At the very beginning of marriage, when Adam and Eve didn't even have parents. Okay, think about that. God was so wise. He thought about this beforehand. And there's a reason why he thought about it. And your parents did the same thing. And it's important that you understand this without sentimentality. It's God's command. Jesus spoke about it again in Matthew chapter 19, verse 5. He said, "Have you not heard what God made in the beginning? He made man and woman. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And what God has joined together, no man will separate." Second time. It's mentioned again in Mark chapter 10, verse 7 to 8. Jesus again speaking about this command. It's mentioned again in Deuteronomy, or 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16, and it's mentioned a fifth time by Paul in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 31. Now I want you to think about this. When God thinks something's important, and he speaks it once, that's enough. When he speaks it twice, when he speaks it 3 times, 5 times, that's an important commandment. Leave and cleave. But there's a second important commandment in the Bible. And let's not forget this one. And here is the balance. In second commandment, and that has to do with a married couple's relationship with their parents. Okay? And here it is. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Is one of the 10 commandments God gave. And he said, honor your father and your mother. Honor, come on, let's say that back again. Honor your father and your mother. For, again he says it will go well with you on this earth, and you will live long on this earth. 2 great promises. Okay, so honor your father and mother. Important promise. And God repeats that commandment 3 times. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 16. You might want to take it down. And then again in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2, on the passage on marriage. So those go together. Now, think with me, and I would say that every married couple needs to learn to balance these 2 sacred commands in a very mature, godly way.